Hunger is a conflict every nation has confronted in the past. At present, over 850 million people are battling to stay alive because they either lack money to buy food or have had poor crop yields. 10 million of these people die every year, and about half of them are children. Norman Borlaug felt a need to help the hungry because he believed all people had a right to have enough food. He developed a type of wheat that increased its production in many third world countries. Borlaug's research saved millions of people and would forever change the efficiency for countries to make food. Norman Ernest Borlaug was born on March 25, 1914. His parents, Henry and Clara, raised him on his grandparents' farm near Cresco, Iowa. After he completed his primary education, Norman went to the high school in Cresco. He competed in wrestling, baseball, and football. While competing, he learned the true meaning of hard work and determination, which helped him throughout his life. Norman planned on going to the Iowa State Teachers College in 1933 to become a high school science teacher. But after high school, a former student from Cresco's high school persuaded him to go to the University of Minnesota. He accepted the offer because his grandfather wanted him to attend a university. Norman also sought a better education, so they drove to the seemingly modern Minnesota city. To pay his way through college, Norman found a job at the university's coffee shop. That's where he met Margaret Gibson, a friendly girl who he soon began dating. When Norman had grown accustomed to St. Paul, he decided to enroll in the university. But first, he had to take an entrance exam. Norman was appalled when he learned that he hadn't passed the test. His only other option was to go to the general college. Norman's frustration at being rejected turned into determination to do well in what now faced him. After only one semester of the general college, Norman was able to transfer to the University of Minnesota's College of Agriculture. Although busy, Norman found different jobs to pay for his schooling. During the summers of 1936 and 1937, he worked for the United States Forest Service in both Massachusetts and Idaho. Norman was promoted and was offered a full-time job at the Idaho National Forest. He would begin working in January of 1938 after he earned his degree. Norman immediately accepted the offer. Confident that he had a stable future ahead, Norman asked Margaret to marry him. She accepted, and they were married on September 27, 1937, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Norman later attended a lecture by Dr. E.C. Stackman that was about rust diseases in plants. The lecture was very compelling, and Norman even remarked to Margaret that he would study under Dr. Stackman if ever possible. Norman Borlaug continued studying at the University of Minnesota. His graduation was nearing, and he was confident he'd get his degree. But weeks before that happened, the supervisor of the Idaho National Forest notified them that his position wouldn't be ready until June. Borlaug was devastated. He didn't know what to do in the meantime. Margaret suggested doing 6 months of postgraduate work at the university. With the help of Dr. Stackman, Norman enrolled in a master's program for plant pathology. He received his master's degree in 1940. Then he proceeded to earn a PhD in plant pathology. In October of 1941, E.I. DuPont de Nemours and Company interviewed him in Wilmington, Delaware. He accepted the job, so Margaret and Norman moved to Wilmington. After becoming accustomed to his new job, Norman Borlaug finished his dissertation and sent it to Professor Stackman. He was awarded his PhD in 1942 and became Dr. Norman Borlaug. His new title was to begin a new reputation for him. After working for E.I. DuPont de Nemours and Company for about 2 years, George Harrar visited Norman about a new job opportunity. He had been sent by the Rockefeller Foundation to find scientists who would help in obliterating hunger in Mexico. He accepted the offer and drove to Mexico to begin his new work. Dr. Borlaug was shocked when he arrived in Mexico. Conflicts in Mexico were immense. The people needed food badly. No fertilizer was used because of the cost, so the ground held few nutrients. He also found it difficult to communicate with the people living there, for he didn't know how to speak Spanish. Through these troubles, he still tried to find a way to help the people. Dr. Harar and Norman worked on increasing wheat production in Mexico. They asked farmers to plant test plots on their farming ground. Together, the scientists tested crop varieties and different soil types. But work was hard in Mexico. Living conditions were poor, and Borlaug was sick frequently. Soon after, Harar gave Norman a new job. He was going to head the wheat program. Under his direction, scientists in Mexico began growing different types of wheat on experimental plots. But they faced conflicts. Rust epidemics killed off their varieties, so they had to repeatedly start over. Norman also began to crossbreed different types of wheat, but it seemed to take a long time to get results. He developed a shuttle breeding program, which sped up the growing process to give faster results. By shuttle breeding wheat varieties, the appearance of the wheat changed. It was made shorter so that the plants wouldn't fall over before harvest. Norman's new varieties increased yields and resisted many diseases that used to kill them off. In the 1950s, the wheats of both the United States and Canada were destroyed by a new type of rust. Noticing that other countries were in need of the wheats in Mexico, Norman Borlaug developed the International Spring Wheat Yield Nursery in 1958. This program helped the countries to develop their own types of wheat that wouldn't fall to rust. In 1960, the Rockefeller Foundation formed a group of scientists to go to the Middle East. Norman was surprised at the amount of people who needed food. Not much was being done about it either. To help the cause, scientists from different countries came to Mexico. Norman taught them and helped them in the fields. In 1966, the International Center for Maize and Wheat Improvement, or CIMMYT, was formed in Mexico. The program was used to teach scientists about methods that could be used to grow both corn and wheat. Dr. Borlaug taught them in one of 3 stations in Mexico. Also in the 1960s, Norman helped countries such as India and Pakistan to become self-sufficient. Seeing success in these countries, nations in Africa, Asia, and Europe began using Norman Borlaug's corn and wheat varieties. This time period became known as the Green Revolution. Norman was notified on October 20th, 1970, and was told that he would be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. On December 10, 1970, Norman Borlaug was honored with a diploma and medal in Oslo, Norway. People back in Cresco, Iowa were very proud to celebrate December 20th of that year as Norman Borlaug Day. When he returned to the States, Norman was given the Iowa's Outstanding Service Award by the governor. In 1986, Norman founded the World Food Prize, a way to honor achievement in increasing the quality, quantity, or availability of food worldwide. He thought of the idea when thinking of the fact that there is no Nobel Prize for agriculture. Every year, the World Food Prize is awarded in Des Moines. Norman sometimes speaks at the event. Also in 1986, Norman Borlaug began directing the Sasakawa Africa Association. This program tried to end hunger and malnutrition in Africa's countries. It is an ongoing program that both Norman Borlaug and Jimmy Carter help with today. Over the years, Norman has received many awards and honors for the great things he's done for countries. Many countries around the world are thankful for his work. Norman Borlaug, a man from the small town of Cresco, has made a huge impact on our world. He has helped solve the global conflict of hunger in many countries. Without his miracle wheat, many countries would still be suffering from starvation. Although Norman also suffered harsh conflicts, he overcame them to become an important part of our world's history. Norman Borlaug's life works have assisted nations to better provide food for their citizens, solving a conflict they had fallen burdened to.